Hi guys, back again with us at Recap in Minutes. Tells about a mute girl who works as a cleaning service. She and her friends are assigned to clean up a dangerous secret lab. Then accidentally she found 2 fingers. Seeing this, her friend took the initiative to call their superior. Then she was left alone in the lab. Then from the long tube filled with water, appeared a man and a half fish. After meeting with the half-fish man, the mute woman named Elisa came back to meet the half-fish man. During their first meeting, she was curious about the half-fish man. At that time the half-fish man was hiding at the bottom of the pond. Then at the edge of the pond Elisa ate boiled eggs and attracted half-fish man. Due to his fascination with the boiled egg that Elisa ate, a half-fish man appeared and showed himself clearly. The half-fish man is called the amphibian man. Initially amphibian man was afraid of Elisa's existence, but she still tried to get closer. She put the boiled egg on the side of the pool and told him to eat it using sign language. Amphibian man took the egg quickly and returned to hide in the pool. When she left the lab, Elisa was shocked by her friend Zelda who was at the door of the lab. But she did not at all suspect Elisa who suddenly came out of the lab. She invited Elisa to meet Colonel whose 2 fingers were found by Elisa. In the colonel's room named Richard, he investigated the background of their lives. He received information about Elisa who was an orphan. She was abandoned by her parents with a wound on her neck. From their chat, it was discovered that the amphibian man was found by Colonel Richard. He is the person who first discovered the amphibian man in the Amazon River. They were both threatened not to reveal about amphibian man to others. For fear of being fired, they both agreed to keep it a secret. In another place, the amphibian man who was in his pond saw the eggshell that Elisa had left. Then he demonstrated the sign language Elisa had previously done. The next day Elisa came back to clean the lab where the amphibian man was. When the scientists left the lab, Elisa took the bag she had hidden in the drawer of the push table she was carrying. Then he took out another boiled egg and placed it on the edge of the pool. Not only that, Elisa also brought vinyl record and played music. From inside the pool, amphibian man secretly took the egg that Elisa had laid. After that Elisa deliberately stopped the music to see the amphibian man's response. Sure enough, after the music stopped amphibian man showed himself. Amphibian man approached and Elisa started playing the music again. Elisa also taught amphibian man sign language. Elisa idly stopped the music, and again the amphibian man was seen protesting Elisa. It seems that he really likes music. They both enjoyed boiled eggs accompanied by beautiful music.
Why do robins sing in December?
Then Elisa came to see amphibian man every day and the relationship between the two grew closer.
Gypsy violin. I can sing every cloud from my view.
But their togetherness was accidentally seen by a man. In another place, a man who had previously seen Elisa and amphibian man's interaction was seen waiting for someone. It is known that the man was a scientist named Dr. Hofstetler who handled the amphibian man. He was picked up by a fat man and drove him to a place. At that place, he met a bald man. It was revealed that Dr. Hofstetler was a spy from the Soviet Union. He uncovered about the amphibian man and divulged about the strengths of the amphibian man, which turned out to be able to communicate with humans and had extraordinary intelligence. Elisa returned to the amphibian man with a pack of boiled eggs to eat with her, but she was surprised when she saw amphibian man outside the pool in chains. Elisa ran towards amphibian man and accidentally dropped one of the boiled eggs. She is very worried about the condition of amphibian man who was badly injured. But she hurried to hide when someone's voice was approaching. Colonel Richard mercilessly tortured the amphibian man with his electric baton. Elisa could only hide in fear. Colonel Richard continued to torture amphibian man, then accidentally he saw the egg that Elisa had dropped. Zelda looked for Elisa, then she found Elisa's push table in front of the door to the lab where amphibian man was. Not long after, a superior from Colonel Richard came along with Dr. Hofstetler who caught Elisa and the amphibian man together. After Dr. Hofstetler saw the plight of the amphibian man, he felt sorry for and defended the amphibian man. Then he accidentally saw Elisa, who was hiding not far from there. Dr. Hofstetler tries to help the amphibian man to be returned to the water. However, Colonel Richard dismissed his attitude. Colonel Richard also discussed his plans to dissect the amphibian man to research the power of the amphibian man. Dr. Hofstetler tried to prevent him, but his words were ignored by Colonel Richard's superior. Elisa, who heard the plan, came out of hiding. Elisa has a friend named Giles. She asks for help to save amphibian man. By speaking using sign language, Elisa tried to convince Giles how important the amphibian man was in his life. She said that only amphibian man never saw his shortcomings and only saw Elisa as a perfect person, not a mute girl. Elisa begged. Giles couldn't help her because he didn't want his to do this to ruin his career. Giles left the desperate Elisa. Giles is an advertising illustrator bringing his work to his boss. However, the work that he created was despised and rejected out of hand by his boss because the result was that his painting looked lifeless. Giles came home and apologized to Elisa. He said that he was sorry and said Elisa was a very important person to him. Giles is also willing to help Elisa. Elsewhere, Dr. Hofstetler met a man he had previously met. He was asked to bring the amphibian man to him by injecting a liquid into the amphibian man's body. Dr. Hofstetler hesitated, knowing that the amphibian man should not be treated like that. Because he has seen intelligence and good communication with humans, Dr. Hofstetler considers the amphibian man like any other human. However, because of the threat given by the man, he finally took the syringe. The day came when Elisa would take amphibian man away from the lab. Zelda was suspicious of Elisa's gestures. Elisa returns home and makes plans with Giles to disguise himself as a laundry and fake his ID card. Elisa returned to the lab and tried to change the direction of the CCTV in the parking lot. Then at Colonel Richard's office, Dr. Hofstetler tried to prevent Colonel Richard from dissecting amphibian man because he did not want this beautiful creature to be destroyed. While Dr. Hofstetler was talking with Colonel Richard, he saw one of the CCTV screens moving. Dr. Hofstetler knew that it was Elisa's doing. By distracting Colonel Richard, he excused himself. Zelda didn't see Elisa when she got home from work. She decided to go back to the laboratory and look for her. Elisa prepares to take the amphibian man away from the lab. When she arrives at the lab, she is surprised by Dr. Hofstetler, who has already come there. Elisa was surprised by the presence of Dr. Hofstetler. But instead of preventing Elisa, he gave the key and helped Elisa free amphibian man. Elisa was told to give medicine and salt to amphibian man. Giles arrives disguised as a laundry worker, but he is intercepted by the guards. Then Elisa came out of the lab carrying the laundry basket which was inside the amphibian man, which was blocked by Zelda. The guards noticed Giles' disguise and pointed a gun at him. Dr. Hofstetler has put a bomb in the power box to make the electricity go out and help Elisa and amphibian man get away from there. Zelda, who had no other choice, ended up helping Elisa to escape. Giles was suspected and ordered to get out of the car. Then Dr. Hofstetler tried to save Giles by injecting the right shot for the amphibian man. He injected it into the guard. He told Giles to quickly pick up Elisa and the amphibian man. Finally, they both got into the car and fled. Because the lab alarm went off, Colonel Richard noticed their action. Arriving at Elisa's house, he lay the amphibian man's body in the bathtub and sprinkled the medicine given by Dr. Hofstetler. Elisa was very happy because she had saved the amphibian man. In the lab, Richard tries to investigate the amphibian man's escape. He was scolded all out by his boss. Elisa also made a sign on her calendar to release the amphibian man to the dock. She also continued to invite amphibian man to communicate. In the morning, Elisa came to the lab and acted like she didn't do anything. But they were summoned by Colonel Richard because he was suspicious of them. They said they had no knowledge of what happened. Then before coming out, it looks like Elisa is trying to say something in sign language. Colonel Richard felt that she was being ridiculed, but Zelda protected Elisa by saying that she praised Colonel Richard. At Elisa's house, Giles paints the beauty of the amphibian man into sleep. Amphibian man feels bored because all day in the narrow bathtub. He started out of there to Giles's workplace and looked at his painting. After meeting the amphibian man, you can see that his painting is more alive this time than before. Then he saw a cat belonging to Giles who was sitting relaxing. Giles tries to stop Amphibian Man, but Amphibian Man becomes afraid of Giles' reaction to him. He also ran from there, and accidentally injured Giles's hand. Elisa got a call from Giles. She immediately went home. She was surprised to see the state of Giles' hands covered in blood. Giles tells about everything that happened. Because of that incident, Amphibian Man left the house. Giles told Elisa to quickly find the Amphibian Man. Elisa came out of the house and found bloodstained marks on one of the posters in the theater below her house. Elisa also tried to check into the theater and found Amphibian Man watching a movie. With the sign language Elisa used, she managed to persuade the Amphibian Man to come home. At home, Elisa treats the wound on Giles' hand. Then Amphibian Man calmed down and started playing again with Giles' pet cats. Elisa went to get rid of the water used to clean Giles' wounds. Then Giles, who was left alone with Amphibian Man, told him not to play with cats. Then Amphibian Man approached him, and put Giles' hand on his head and his hand on Giles' head. Then a small glow appeared in the Amphibian Man's body. Elisa returned the Amphibian Man to the bathtub again. But when Amphibian Man tried to touch the wound on her neck, Elisa avoided the Amphibian Man and left. The next morning, Giles woke up from his sleep and examined the wound on his hand. Surprised, he saw the wound that had disappeared. Before long, the owner of the neighbor next door was banging on their door. He protested that his theater had become wet from seepage of water from their house. Giles apologized and immediately looked for Elisa. He saw that the bathroom door had a lot of water coming out. When he opened the door, water came rushing out of the bathroom. He saw Elisa embracing Amphibian Man. Giles finally decided to let Elisa be alone with Amphibian Man. When Elisa had dried her body, Giles told Elisa about his wound that healed and his hair that grew back. They both know that it is an act of Amphibian Man. However, from time to time the Amphibian Man's body was getting weaker. As they were sitting at the dining table, in her daydreams, she could talk and tell the Amphibian Man that she loved him very much.
And if I try, I love you. You think I told you so.
Elisa invited Zelda to come because Amphibian Man's state was getting weaker and his scales began to come off. Zelda also suggested asking Dr. Hofstetler about it. But in another place, in the rain, Dr. Hofstetler was waiting for someone. It turned out that he had been known to be treasonous by the man who had previously worked with him. By sending 2 of his men, they were sent to kill Dr. Hofstetler. Then from the back of the Colonel, Richard shot the man's men and saved Dr. Hofstetler. But he saved Dr. Hofstetler because he wanted information about the whereabouts of the Amphibian Man. Dr. Hofstetler did not want to tell him, but he was constantly being tortured by Colonel Richard. He was also threatened with murder if he did not give the information. In urgent circumstances, Dr. Hofstetler said that he was carrying the Amphibian Man with assistance by a cleaning service. Colonel Richard, who had suspected Elisa and Zelda from the start, came to meet Zelda. He forced Zelda to say where the Amphibian Man was. Zelda tried to cover Elisa, who took Amphibian Man away. But because Zelda's husband was scared, he uncovered Zelda and Elisa's plan to take the Amphibian Man away from the lab. Hearing this, Colonel Richard went to meet Elisa. Zelda panicked and called Elisa. She warned Elisa that Colonel Richard was heading to her house. Colonel Richard gets to Elisa's house, but he can't find Elisa or the Amphibian Man in that house. He tried to find a clue, then he found a sheet of date paper containing the time to release the Amphibian Man. Elisa managed to bring him to the dock. He also said goodbye to Giles. As Amphibian Man walked to the dock and said goodbye to Elisa. With a sad look, Elisa gave Amphibian Man's departure. Suddenly Giles was hit by Colonel Richard from behind. Then Colonel Richard shot Amphibian Man and Elisa. But not long after that, Giles regained consciousness and hit Colonel Richard's head back until he fainted. Giles approached Amphibian Man and Elisa, who was unconscious. Giles cried, hugging Elisa. Suddenly the Amphibian Man regained consciousness with a blue light on his body. At that time, Colonel Richard regained consciousness and began to mock Amphibian Man. He is angry with Colonel Richard for killing Elisa. Then Amphibian Man took his revenge by killing Colonel Richard. Colonel Richard was covered in blood. The police began to arrive and see what happened. Amphibian Man approached Elisa and carried her. He walked with Elisa and finally jumped into the water. In the water, Amphibian Man kissed Elisa, who was unconscious. Then a miracle appeared. Elisa began to regain consciousness and the wound on his neck had turned into gills and allowed her to breathe underwater for a long time. Okay guys, so that's the story from The Shape of Water, which has a storyline that is not easy to guess. From the last scene it can be concluded that Elisa and Amphibian Man can live together in water, and their love can both unite. Until here is our video. Just keep on watching and see you.